The inspection begins. Captain Zylock stepped out of his sleek silver spacecraft, his four eyes blinking in quick succession as he observed the humans in white coats waiting for him. He had traveled across light years to negotiate a trade deal with Earth, expecting a formal diplomatic meeting. Instead, he was standing inside a sterile white examination room, surrounded by strange human machines that beeped and blinked. A tall human with dark hair and a calm expression stepped forward. She wore a white coat and had a device in her hand that hummed softly. "Welcome to Earth, Captain Zylock," she said with a professional smile. "I am Dr. Emma Carter. Before we proceed with the trade discussions, we need to conduct a standard medical inspection. It's a routine procedure for all extraterrestrial visitors." Zylock's bioshell tightened in alarm. He was a proud Varlithian, a species known for its strict privacy laws regarding physical examinations. The idea of being inspected like a common biological specimen was insulting. "This is unnecessary," Zylock replied, his voice smooth but firm. "I assure you, I am in perfect health. My species does not require medical inspections. We are far more advanced than humans." Dr. Carter exchanged glances with her team. "I understand, Captain, but this is a requirement for all incoming non-human travelers. We need to make sure your biology doesn't pose a health risk to Earth's environment. It won't take long." Zylock crossed his two upper arms over his chest, a clear sign of disapproval among his people. "You expect me to strip my bioshell in front of strangers?" Dr. Carter hesitated. "Not entirely. We just need to perform a deep tissue scan to check for unknown bacteria, viruses, or foreign contaminants. You can keep your outer layer intact, but we will need a closer look at your internal physiology." Zylock felt a cold wave of discomfort rush over him. The Varlithians considered internal body scans a severe violation of personal dignity. But he was here for an important mission. His people needed Earth's rare minerals, and ruining the trade deal over a simple inspection might cause diplomatic tension. With a slow exhale, Zylock straightened his posture. "Fine. Proceed quickly." Dr. Carter nodded and gestured towards a large scanning chamber, shaped like a glass cylinder. "Please step inside the bioscanner. It will map your cellular structure in under a minute." Zylock moved cautiously into the chamber. The glass doors hissed shut, and a soft blue light flickered around him. The machine hummed, and Zylock felt a strange tingling sensation pass through his body as it scanned him from head to toe. From outside, the human scientists watched the screen as lines of alien DNA sequences flashed before them. Zylock observed their faces, expecting boredom or routine focus. Instead, he saw widening eyes and whispers of confusion. The screen beeped loudly. One of the assistants gasped. Dr. Carter stepped closer to the monitor, her eyebrows furrowing in confusion. Zylock's inner instincts flared. He had seen that expression before on many different species. It was the universal look of shock and discovery. "What is it?" he demanded, his voice sharp. Dr. Carter didn't answer immediately. She tapped the screen, zooming into a specific genetic marker that was glowing red. The assistant next to her murmured, "This can't be right. His DNA contains traces of Earth origin species." Zylock stiffened. "Earth origin? Impossible. His kind had evolved on Varlith 7, a world light years away from this planet. There was no way he shared any biological connection with humans or any species from Earth." "You must be mistaken," Zylock said coldly. "Varlithians have never set foot on this planet before." Dr. Carter turned towards him, her expression unreadable. "That's the thing, Captain. According to this scan, your species might not have started on Varlith 7 at all." A deep, uneasy silence filled the room. Zylock's mind raced. If what she was saying was true, then the history of his entire species might be a lie. Before he could respond, the scanner let out a sudden alarm, flashing red warnings across the screen. More human guards entered the room, their hands resting on the weapons at their sides. Xylox's 4 eyes narrowed in suspicion. "What are you doing?" he asked. Dr. Carter took a step forward, trying to stay calm. "We need to confirm this result, Captain. You might be carrying something unusual." Xylox's bioshell hardened as his instincts screamed danger. The doors locked shut behind him with a metallic click. Now he was trapped. And for the first time since arriving on Earth, he realized the humans might know something about him that even he didn't. Suspicious results and panic ensues. The room felt colder now. Captain Xylox could feel the tension tightening around him like an invisible net. The quiet murmurs of the human scientists weren't just about confusion anymore. They carried something deeper, something closer to fear. The metallic hiss of the scanner chamber's doors, locking behind him, made his 4 hearts pound in unison. This was not how diplomatic visits were supposed to go. Anomaly detected. Dr. Emma Carter's fingers flew across the holographic interface, eyes scanning the red warning signals flashing on the display. Every second, the machine revealed more impossible data. This makes no sense," one of her assistants stammered, his face pale. Emma tried to keep her voice calm, but inside, her mind was racing. "Run the analysis again. There has to be a mistake." The machine beeped again. The results did not change. Xylox had seen enough. "Explain. Now." His voice was a low growl, the deep vibrations filling the room. Emma took a deep breath and turned toward him. "Captain Xylox, according to these scans, your biological structure contains genetic markers identical to ancient Earth species." Xylox froze. His kind, the Varlithians, were an advanced species that had evolved millions of light-years away from this primitive planet. Their homeworld, Varlith 7, was located in the Den of Expanse, a sector so distant that even the humans had yet to explore it. There was no logical way he could share DNA with any Earth-born lifeform. "You're mistaken," Xylox said, his voice now dangerously quiet. Emma shook her head. "I wish I were." She pointed at the glowing molecular structure rotating in the air. "These sequences, see these base pairs. They match with ancient fossil records from Earth's prehistoric era. Your DNA isn't just similar, it's a near-perfect evolutionary descendant." Xylox's 2 upper arms twitched, a nervous tick in his species. "You are suggesting that my people, one of the oldest spacefaring civilizations in this galaxy, are somehow connected to this planet." Emma hesitated. "Not just connected. It's possible that your species originated from here." The room went silent. Xylox's mind reeled. This wasn't just an insult, it was a direct contradiction of everything his people believed. The Varlithians prided themselves on being a genetically pure race, untouched by outside contamination. If what the humans were saying was true, then it meant his entire history was a lie. Humans react. One of the security officers, a broad-shouldered man named Captain Reynolds, stepped forward. "Dr. Carter, what exactly does this mean for Earth?" Emma exhaled. "It means we have living proof that Earth's ancient life didn't just stay on this planet. At some point in the past, something or someone took them away. The Varlithians may not be aliens at all. They may be our distant cousins." The scientist next to her frowned. "Or they might be something else entirely." The guards in the room tightened their grips on their weapons. Xylox could feel the shift in the atmosphere. The humans were no longer looking at him as a diplomatic guest. They were looking at him as an unknown variable, a possible threat. Xylox's fear and paranoia. His 4 hearts pounded faster. The doors were still locked. The guards were still armed. The scientists were whispering. His mind raced through possible scenarios. Were they stalling him on purpose? Had the humans planned this all along? Was this an attempt to hold him hostage, to force the Varlithians into revealing their secrets? Or worse, did the humans think he was some kind of experiment? Xylox knew how less advanced species treated things they didn't understand. History across the stars was filled with horrors committed in the name of science. Would humans dissect him, study him, lock him in a lab for the rest of his existence? He would not let that happen. His claws extended slightly from his fingertips, an involuntary defensive reaction from his species. The moment did not go unnoticed. "Stand down." Captain Reynolds immediately ordered his guards. "Everyone, calm down. Let's not escalate this situation." Psylocke narrowed his eyes. Why would a simple genetic discovery be considered an escalation? Because they were afraid of what it meant. Not just for him, but for the entire galaxy. A decision is made. Dr. Carter finally broke the tense silence. "Captain Psylocke, I understand that this is overwhelming, but we need to run more tests. If we can confirm this connection, it could change everything we know about our own history." Psylocke didn't trust her. His species had lived independently for millennia, without human interference. If the humans discovered something dangerous, something they weren't meant to know, would they really let him go? He had one option left. He had to escape. Final moments of suspense. A sharp beep interrupted the moment. One of the machines flashed red, displaying new data. The human scientists looked at it, and their faces went pale. "What is it now?" Reynolds demanded. Emma's breath caught in her throat. "This isn't just about his DNA anymore," she whispered. "There's something else in his body." Psylocke's blood ran cold. Something else. Before he could react, the security doors suddenly slammed shut with a loud metallic clang. An alarm blared through the facility. A mechanical voice echoed through the room. "CQURTYLOCKDOWN activated. Do note ALO the sub GCT to LEV." Psylocke's eyes widened. He wasn't just a diplomatic guest anymore. He was a prisoner, and the humans weren't going to let him walk out of here alive. The strange courtship misunderstanding. Trapped and misinformed. Captain Psylocke stood frozen, his 4 hearts pounding in his chest. The alarm blared through the medical facility. Bright red warning lights flashed along the walls. The security doors were sealed shut, locking him inside with the humans. He clenched his 2 upper hands into fists while his lower arms trembled slightly, a reaction his species experienced when overwhelmed by confusion and fear. Why are they doing this? From his perspective, the situation was clear. These humans had discovered something about him that made them fearful. Maybe they wanted to study him, control him, keep him imprisoned in this white-walled facility forever. He had to get out. But then, the strangest realization hit him. Maybe this wasn't a medical crisis at all. Maybe the humans were reacting this way for an entirely different reason. A Varlithian's perspective. Psylocke's mind wavered as he recalled the customs of his own people. Among Varlithians, there were strict cultural taboos surrounding medical inspections. One of the greatest social violations was an uninvited genetic scan, especially one that involved reproductive markers. To perform such a scan on another Varlithian was considered a courtship act. Not just any courtship act, an aggressive one. Varlithians didn't choose mates the way humans did. Their reproduction was carefully planned, and genetic compatibility tests were only performed when 2 individuals were already bonded. In other words, such an examination was reserved for serious life partners. And now, these humans, these bizarre creatures, had just scanned him without permission. In Varlithian culture, that meant only one thing. They were trying to initiate a courtship ritual. Psylocke's 4 eyes widened in horror. The humans were not imprisoning him. They were proposing to him. The awkward realization. Panic surged through Psylocke's veins. His sharp claws retracted, and his posture shifted from defensive to alarmed. He turned his gaze toward Dr. Emma Carter, the human scientist who had led the examination. She had touched him during the scan. She had spoken to him softly. She had even been the first to inform him of his compatibility with Earth-based life. Oh no. Among Varlithians, the first to reveal compatibility was the initiator of the mating process. That meant Dr. Emma Carter had just unknowingly proposed to him. Xylox's mind spiraled into complete confusion. Did humans court their partners this way? Was this their method of selecting mates? He recalled what he knew about human relationships. Their culture was strange and inefficient. They engaged in complex social interactions, exchanged pleasantries, and used primitive signals to establish bonds. Could it be? The human scientists choose mates based on genetic analysis. If that was true, then he had just been matched with a human mate. A female human mate. Dr. Emma Carter. The sheer horror of the misunderstanding made his bioshell twitch. He had to reject the offer immediately. Humans are completely oblivious. Meanwhile, Dr. Emma Carter was focused on the data screen, completely unaware of Xylox's internal meltdown. "We need to analyze this further," she muttered, tapping the holographic console. "If his species truly shares ancient DNA with Earth's organisms, we need to find out what caused the genetic divergence." "Should we inform command?" asked Captain Reynolds, the lead security officer. Emma nodded. "Yes, but let's be careful. This could be a diplomatic breakthrough or a disaster, depending on how his people react." They turned back toward Xylox, expecting him to ask more questions. Instead, they found him staring at them in horror, all four of his eyes wide and twitching. Emma hesitated. Captain Xylox, are you okay?" Xylox took a cautious step backward, raising both of his upper arms in a Varlithian gesture of rejection. "Dr. Emma Carter," he said formally, his voice trembling, "I regret to inform you that I cannot accept your proposal." A dead silence filled the room. Emma blinked. "What?" "I understand that I may possess certain genetic markers that you find desirable," Xylox continued, "but I assure you, I am not seeking a mate." Emma's expression twisted in confusion. "Wait, what?" Xylox's heart thumped painfully. This was so awkward. Rejecting a mating proposal was one thing. Rejecting it in front of witnesses was another. He had to be careful not to offend her. He cleared his throat. "Please understand that while I deeply respect you and your scientific contributions, I do not feel a personal connection in the way that would be required for such an arrangement." The security guards and scientists exchanged confused looks. Emma's mouth fell open slightly. "Are you rejecting my scientific report?" Xylox hesitated. "If scientific report is what humans call a bonding request, then yes, I must decline ****. Bonding request. Emma's brows furrowed. "Captain, I have no idea what you're talking about." Xylox's fourth eye twitched in sheer discomfort. Did she not realize what she had done? "I understand that humans have different customs," he said, choosing his words carefully. "I do not wish to insult your traditions. But in my culture, scanning an individual's genetic compatibility without prior consent is considered an act of courtship." The room went silent again. Then, one of the younger scientists snorted. Then another let out a choked laugh. Emma blinked twice, processing the words, and then she burst out laughing. Xylox stiffened in surprise. "Why are you laughing? This is a serious matter." Emma held up a hand, gasping between chuckles. You think we scanned you for a mating ritual?" Xylox crossed his arms, offended. "You mean you didn't?" Emma shook her head, wiping tears of laughter from her eyes. "Captain Xylox, it was just a medical scan. That's it. We do this for everyone. It's not romantic." Xylox stared at her, his mind imploding. Oh, no. He had just rejected a courtship proposal that never existed. The embarrassment hit him so hard his bioshell dimmed in color. The humans continued to laugh, some trying to suppress it, others just openly amused. Even the security guards were smirking. This was, without question, the worst diplomatic meeting of his life. Ancient DNA and the lost connection. The aftermath of an awkward mistake. Captain Zylox sat rigidly on the examination table, his forearms folded tightly across his chest. The humans were still chuckling, some of them whispering to each other as they stole amused glances in his direction. Zylox's bioshell remained dim, a clear sign of embarrassment among his species. He had made a terrible mistake, one that would likely be remembered for centuries. I have disgraced myself. Varlithians were known for their diplomatic precision, their logical reasoning, and their ability to decode alien cultures with ease. And yet here he was, a high-ranking envoy from one of the oldest spacefaring civilizations, and he had just publicly rejected a human doctor because he thought she had proposed to him. It was the most humiliating moment of his life. And it wasn't even the worst part of the day, because now he had bigger concerns. Something was wrong with his DNA. And if these humans were right, his entire history might be a lie. Strange evidence. Dr. Emma Carter, still wiping away the last of her laughter, took a deep breath and refocused. "All right, Captain Zylox," she said, her voice regaining its professional tone. "Let's move past that misunderstanding. We still have something serious to discuss." Zylox straightened, grateful for the shift back to logic and facts. "Yes. What exactly did you find?" Emma tapped a few buttons on the holographic display, bringing up a glowing model of Zylox's genetic structure. "These sequences here," she pointed at a cluster of genetic markers, "match ancient Earth organisms that went extinct millions of years ago. Specifically, we found similarities with a species known as theropod reptilians, a classification that includes the velociraptor and Tyrannosaurus rex." Zylox frowned. "I do not know these creatures." Emma turned to one of the scientists, who quickly brought up a rotating 3D image of a velociraptor skeleton. Zylox's four eyes widened slightly. Something about the bone structure, the elongated limbs, the sharp claws, the curvature of the skull, felt eerily familiar. "These creatures," Emma continued, "were dominant predators on Earth during the Cretaceous period. Then, around 66 million years ago, a mass extinction event wiped them out. Or so we thought." She turned back to him, her expression unreadable. "But if your DNA is this closely related to them, then that means some of them didn't die." Zylox's bioshell flared in alarm. "That is impossible. My people have recorded millions of years of history. We have always lived on Varlith 7. There is no record of our kind ever being here." Emma nodded. "Which leads us to a bigger question. How did they get from Earth to Varlith 7? The room fell silent. Zylox hated silence. It meant someone was hiding something. And now, for the first time, he wondered, what did his people know? A history that doesn't add up. Emma continued, bringing up another set of files. "The strangest part," she said, "is that your species' earliest recorded history only goes back about 2 million years. Before that, there's nothing. No fossils. No evidence of your kind evolving naturally on Varlith 7. It's as if your species just appeared." Zylox stiffened. That wasn't possible. Varlithians were older than humans, older than most species in this sector of the galaxy. They had always believed themselves to be among the first sentient beings. Had that belief been wrong? Had they been taken from somewhere else? Had they been created? "No," he said firmly. "We are a proud and advanced species. We have conquered space. We have built empires. We have. You have no fossil records." Emma's words cut through his confidence like a blade. Zylox fell silent. He knew she was right. Varlithian history began abruptly. Their earliest records spoke of arrival, not origin. A mysterious period of awakening when the first Varlithians had already been fully evolved, their knowledge vast, but their past unclear. It had never made sense. Until now. Who took them? And why? Zylox inhaled sharply, trying to keep his voice steady. "If what you are saying is true, then that means my ancestors were not native to Varlith 7, which means someone, or something, must have taken them there. Emma nodded. Exactly. But who? And why? Psylocke demanded. Why take a species from one planet and place them on another? Emma exhaled. That's what we need to find out. But there's one more thing. She hesitated, glancing at the security officers before continuing. We found something else in your DNA. Something older than Earth's raptors. Something that doesn't belong to any known evolutionary path. Psylocke narrowed his eyes. What do you mean? Emma pulled up a separate data screen. This time, the genetic structure looked different, older, more alien. We ran a deeper scan and found anomalous genetic sequences. These markers don't belong to any known species, not on Earth, not in our records, not anywhere. Psylocke's blood ran cold. Your people may have started here on Earth, Emma said carefully, but something else changed you. A long silence filled the room. Psylocke felt sick. What if his people had been engineered? What if their DNA had been altered by an unknown force? What if the Varlithians weren't just lost, but had been designed for something? The final shock. Just then, a new alarm rang out, this time from Emma's personal communicator. She pressed it quickly. What's going on? A voice crackled through the speaker. Dr. Carter, you need to see this. We've just found something buried beneath the Antarctic ice, and you won't believe what it is. Emma's face paled. Psylocke felt his claws tense involuntarily. Something had been found on Earth. Something related to him. And for the first time in his life, he was truly afraid. The secret of the Varlithians. Buried secrets. The Antarctic Research Facility stood like a silent monolith against the frozen wasteland. Ice-capped mountains loomed in the distance, the wind howling through the empty plains, as if the earth itself was warning against what lay buried beneath. Deep below the surface, in a sealed excavation chamber, a team of human scientists stood around a massive fossilized structure, half buried in the ice. It wasn't natural. It wasn't human. And it looked eerily familiar. Dr. Emma Carter's communicator buzzed again, the urgency in the researcher's voice undeniable. Dr. Carter, you need to bring Captain Psylocke here immediately. You're not going to believe what we found. The journey south. The flight to Antarctica was long, and the silence inside the military transport was thick with tension. Captain Psylocke sat with his arms folded, his 4 eyes locked on the icy landscape stretching below. His bioshell remained dark, a sign of his inner turmoil. Emma sat across from him, trying to make sense of the situation herself. We're about to see something connected to your species, she said finally, breaking the silence. Something that has been hidden here for, we don't even know how long. Psylocke exhaled slowly. If what you've told me is true, if my people were truly taken from Earth, then this place may hold the answers we've never had. His claws tapped anxiously against the armrest. The Varlithian government had always insisted that their civilization was one of the oldest in the galaxy, untouched by outside influence. But deep down, Psylocke knew that wasn't entirely true. The gaps in their history, the sudden advancements, the legends of an arrival rather than an origin, all of it suggested a greater mystery that had been ignored for generations. Now, he was about to face it head-on. The unearthed structure. When the transport landed, a team of researchers and military personnel escorted them down into the ice. The facility was built into a massive glacier, where layers of permafrost had been carefully carved away to reveal what lay beneath. As Psylocke and Emma descended the metallic stairway, the air grew heavy. And then he saw it. A ship, or what was left of one. Frozen in the ice, a titanic structure loomed over them, covered in jagged formations of frost. It wasn't human-made. It wasn't even built by modern Varlithian standards. It was ancient. Psylocke's breath caught in his throat. The shape, the curvature of the hull, the patterns etched into its surface. It all felt familiar, like a half-forgotten memory buried deep within his DNA. Emma turned to him, her voice hushed with awe. This ship is at least 66 million years old. The number sent a shockwave through Xylox's mind. 66 million years. The same time as the Cretaceous extinction event. The same time the dinosaurs vanished from Earth. The same time his people may have disappeared as well. The truth beneath the ice. Emma led him closer to the structure, where researchers were still excavating its interior. The hull was damaged, warped from millions of years trapped in the ice, but there was something inside. A chamber. A preserved chamber. One of the scientists waved them over. "Dr. Carter, we found something you need to see." They stepped through the icy remains of the ship's entrance into a dimly lit, preserved section of the ancient vessel. And that's when Xylox saw them. Frozen bodies. Dozens of them, encased in crystalline stasis pods, their features unmistakable. They were Varlithians. Xylox's claws dug into his palms as he stepped closer, staring at the frozen faces of his own kind. His ancestors. Their features were almost identical to his, but there were subtle differences. Their limbs were slightly more elongated, their facial ridges less defined. They looked like an earlier version of his species, one that had not yet undergone millions of years of adaptation on Varlith 7. He turned to Emma, his voice low and shaken. "They were here," he whispered. "They were taken from Earth." Emma nodded grimly. "And whoever took them left this ship behind. The foreign DNA." As Xylox tried to process the sight before him, another scientist approached with a data tablet, her face pale. "Dr. Carter, Captain Xylox, we've also completed the deeper DNA analysis." Emma took the tablet, scanning the results. As her eyes moved down the screen, her expression darkened. "These sequences," she murmured. Xylox frowned. What is it?" Emma turned the screen toward him. "Your people may have come from Earth, but somewhere along the line, something else was added to their genetic code." Xylox's four hearts clenched. "Something else," he repeated. Emma nodded, her voice almost a whisper. "There are traces of genetic material in your DNA that don't match anything from Earth. Not dinosaurs, not humans, not anything we've ever seen before." Xylox felt his breath hitch. "What does that mean?" Emma looked him in the eye. "It means your ancestors weren't just taken from Earth. They were changed." A long silence filled the chamber. Xylox turned back toward the frozen bodies in the pods, his mind spinning. Who had taken them? Why had they been modified? And if the original Varlithians had been left behind, then what had his species become? The final revelation. Before Xylox could say another word, an alarm blared through the facility. "Warning," a mechanical voice announced. "Energy signature detected. Unknown power source activating." Xylox and Emma snapped their heads up. A low hum resonated through the chamber. The stasis pods were beginning to glow. Then, a single pod cracked open, and something inside began to move. Xylox staggered back, his claws instinctively extending. The frozen ancestor inside the pod was waking up, and as its four glowing eyes flickered open, it spoke in a language Xylox had never heard. Yet somehow, deep in his bones, he understood. It wasn't just Varlithian. It was older, and it carried a warning. "You were never meant to find us." The pod shattered. The ancient being stepped forward, and Xylox realized, with dawning horror, his people had been running from something all along. Escape or alliance? The awakening of an ancient one. The air inside the ice-covered chamber became thick with an energy Xylox had never felt before. It was older than him, older than his species, older than even the history he had once believed to be true. A low hum vibrated through the walls, as if the entire frozen ship was coming back to life. The stasis pod cracked further, frost-covered glass shattering onto the metallic floor. The being inside stirred, and then it moved. Xylox tensed, his claws flexing, ready to defend himself. He had faced many strange creatures across the galaxy, but this was different. This was one of his own kind, yet not. The figure inside the pod was Varlithian, but not in the way Xylox had ever seen before. The facial ridges were sharper, the limbs slightly elongated, the bioshell smoother and more uniform. The most unsettling part, however, were the 4 glowing golden eyes, brighter than anything Xylox had ever seen in his species, and when the being spoke, the words were ancient, yet somehow, Xylox understood them as if they had always been inside him. "You were never meant to find us." The power in those words sent a shiver down Xylox's spine. The being stepped forward, the last of the frost crumbling off its body, revealing intricate markings across its bioshell, patterns that resembled the unknown DNA strands Emma had found in Xylox's genetic code. Emma and the human scientists backed away, their faces pale. Even the hardened security officers standing nearby had their weapons half raised, uncertain of what to do. Xylox took a cautious step forward, his voice low. "Who are you?" The golden-eyed Varlithian tilted its head, observing him as if scanning his very existence. And then it spoke again. "I am not the one you should be asking that question. The real question is, what are you?" A cold dread settled over Xylox, because deep inside, he already knew the answer. The truth revealed. The ancient Varlithian stepped further out of the pod, its body graceful yet unnervingly precise. It did not move with the hesitation of someone just waking from a long slumber. It moved with purpose. It studied Xylox and then shifted its gaze to the humans. "You have awoken something you do not understand," it said, its voice carrying a weight of authority. Dr. Emma Carter swallowed hard. "We didn't awaken you on purpose. We were studying this site. Your curiosity has doomed you before." The words struck something deep in Xylox's mind, a sensation he couldn't describe. "This place," the Ancient One continued, "is not your origin. It is your prison." A hush fell over the room. Emma's face darkened. "What do you mean, prison?" The golden-eyed Varlithian studied them for a long moment before finally speaking again. "Your species was taken, altered. You were never meant to remember the truth." Xylox felt his breath catch in his throat. This ship, the Ancient One gestured toward the massive frozen wreck, was not meant to be found. It was buried here for a reason. We tried to escape the fate chosen for us, but we failed. Xylox narrowed his eyes. "Who did this to us?" The ancient Varlithian's gaze pierced through him. "The architects." Silence. The name echoed in Xylox's mind, but it held no clear meaning. He looked toward Emma, but her face told him she had never heard that name before either. But something about it felt familiar, like a half-forgotten memory buried deep in his DNA. Xylox's voice was quieter now. "What are they?" The Ancient One took a slow step forward. "The ones who made us," it said, "and the ones who will come back to finish what they started." A terrifying choice. The words hung heavy in the freezing air. Xylox's mind was racing. His people, his entire civilization, had believed they were one of the oldest in the galaxy. But if this being was telling the truth, then the Varlithians weren't a natural species at all. They were an experiment, a creation, and worse, unfinished. Emma shook her head. "Wait. If these architects made your people, why did they leave? Why haven't we seen any signs of them?" The ancient Varlithian's golden eyes dimmed slightly. "They did not leave. They are simply waiting for the right moment to return." Xylox's bioshell flared with unease. "And when they return," the Ancient One continued, "they will correct their mistake." The weight of the statement crushed Xylox's chest. A mistake. His entire species. A mistake. They weren't meant to survive. They weren't meant to be free. They were meant to be controlled. Escape or alliance? Xylox's mind raced. If this was true, if the architects were still out there, then he had a choice to make. He could warn his people, or he could keep this information hidden, Allow the Varlithians to continue believing in their false history and pretend that nothing had changed. One path led to war. The other led to ignorance. Neither was safe. Psylocke turned toward Emma. "If what he's saying is true," he said, his voice low, "then both of our species may be in danger." Emma nodded. "Which is why we need to work together." Psylocke had never imagined an alliance between his people and humans. His government saw them as primitive, weaker, lesser. But now he saw the truth. The humans weren't inferior. They were the only species in the galaxy that had survived without the Architect's influence. They were wild, uncontrolled, a true anomaly. And that might make them the Architect's greatest threat. Psylocke turned back toward the golden-eyed Varlithian. "Tell me what I need to know." The Ancient One smiled. And then it spoke a single sentence that changed everything. "The Architects have already returned. The final decision and a new beginning. The Architects have already returned." Psylocke stood motionless, his 4 eyes fixed on the golden-eyed Varlithian before him. The words echoed through his mind, shaking the very foundation of his reality. The Architects have already returned. The frozen ship, the lost history, the modifications to his species' DNA, it all pointed to something terrifying. They had never been alone. The ones who had made them, shaped them, twisted them into something unnatural, were still out there, watching, waiting. Psylocke's claws tightened against his palms. His entire life, he had believed the Varlithians were an ancient, independent race, one of the first true spacefaring civilizations. But now, he understood the truth. They were not the creators of their own destiny. They were a project. And the creators had come back to finish their work, the hidden war. Emma Carter took a slow, measured breath, glancing between Psylocke and the ancient Varlithian. The weight of the moment was crushing. "If the Architects are already here," she said carefully, "why haven't we seen them?" The Ancient One's golden eyes dimmed. "Because they do not need to be seen. They never fight wars the way you think of them." Psylocke felt a creeping dread slither through him. "What do you mean?" The ancient Varlithian stepped forward, speaking as if revealing a long-forgotten secret. "The Architects are not a single species," it said. "They are a force of control, a network of intelligences that exist across the galaxy, hidden in the shadows of civilizations. They do not arrive in great war fleets. They do not destroy planets with fire and weapons." Emma's brow furrowed. "Then what do? They change you." Psylocke felt his heart stop for a moment. "They embed themselves in your society," the Ancient One continued. "They rewrite your history. They manipulate your biology. They alter your thoughts, your beliefs, your very sense of self. And by the time you realize what has happened, you are no longer the same people you once were." Psylocke's throat tightened. "You mean they infiltrate civilizations from within?" The ancient Varlithian nodded. "And if they have already returned," Emma whispered, "that means they're already here. Among us. A race against time." The revelation struck like lightning. Psylocke's mind raced. His people, the proud Varlithians, had always been obsessed with genetic purity, with the idea that they had evolved into the perfect form. They had strict laws controlling reproduction, they banned biological modifications, and they had long dismissed certain technologies that could corrupt their evolutionary path. Had that been their own choice, or had the Architects already been influencing them for millennia? If they had never truly been free, then the idea of warning his government was pointless. Because what if the Architects were already inside the Varlithian High Council? What if they were pulling the strings all along? Emma turned to him. "Psylocke, we can't let this happen. We have to fight back." Psylocke exhaled slowly. Fight back. That was the human answer to everything. Resist. Rebel. Refuse control. It was why they were so dangerous to empires, why they refused to be subjugated by larger galactic powers, and perhaps why the Architects had never touched them. Because the one thing humans had that no other species possessed was their ability to break every rule ever written. A new alliance is forged. Psylocke turned to the ancient Varlithian. "You said the architects would come back to correct their mistake," he said. "What mistake?" The ancient one's eyes burned with intensity, letting us think for ourselves. Psylocke clenched his jaw. That was it. The architects had created the Varlithians, shaping them into something beyond what they originally were. But somewhere along the way, something went wrong. The Varlithians had gained too much independence. And now, the architects had returned to take that away. Psylocke took a slow step forward. "Then we won't let them." Emma looked at him sharply. "You're saying you'll help us?" Psylocke took a breath, then nodded. "My government won't listen," he said. "They may already be under the architect's influence. But I can still act. If I return to Varlith 7, I'll be monitored, controlled. If I stay here, I can help you prepare." Emma's eyes widened slightly. "You'd betray your own people for this." Psylocke's voice was quiet, but steady. "My people are not free. I am not betraying them. I am trying to save them." A tense silence followed. Then Emma stepped forward and held out her hand. "If we're going to do this," she said, "then let's make it official." Psylocke hesitated, then slowly reached out his upper right hand, clasping hers in a firm grip. An alliance had been made, one that would change the fate of the entire galaxy. The final warning. The golden-eyed Varlithian turned to them, its expression unreadable. "You have taken the first step," it said. "But understand this, the architects will not allow resistance. They will come for you, as they have come for every species before you. And they will not stop." Psylocke met its gaze. "Then we won't stop either." Emma nodded. "We fight back. We expose them." The ancient Varlithian exhaled. "If you truly wish to defeat them, you must be prepared to go where no species has ever dared to go before." Psylocke narrowed his eyes. "Where?" The ancient one's voice dropped to a whisper. "To the architect's homeworld." Psylocke's breath caught. Emma's face paled. And in that moment, Psylocke knew this was only the beginning. The battle for freedom had just begun.